I still remember the sound of his tiny footsteps echoing down our hallway. It all started with the room. After trying for years to have a child of our own, my husband Ben and I finally decided to adopt. We didn't want to wait for a newborn. We wanted someone who already needed a home, someone who would feel loved immediately. So, we turned the guest room into a little boy's dream space. Blue walls, rocket ship wallpaper, a loft bed with a slide. I even hand-painted his name, Michael, above the door before we even met him. I know, kind of risky, but the name just felt right, like it was meant to be. A week later, the social worker called. A boy around 6 years old had just been found. No family, no name, no records, just quiet, curious eyes. They called him a special case. They asked if we were open to a faster placement. Without hesitation, we said yes. He stepped into our house like he'd been there before. Seriously, no wide eyes, no hesitation, just calm. The social worker called him the boy because he wouldn't respond to any name they tried. But the weirdest part, he came with nothing. No birth certificate, no file, not even a scribbled note. They said he was found wandering near an old church on the edge of town, quiet and unharmed. No one claimed him, no missing child reports matched. They guessed he was around 6, maybe 7. He didn't speak a word, just nodded when we talked and followed instructions like he already knew what we were going to say. Ben was worried, but me? I looked into his eyes and saw peace. And here's the strangest part. When I showed him his new room, he walked straight to the door, pointed at the name Michael, and whispered, "That's me." Chills ran down my back. I never told him that name. It didn't take long for Michael to settle in. Too fast, actually. Most kids have a rough transition when moving into a new home, but not him. He never cried, never asked for anyone, never clung to me like other adopted children usually do. Instead, he just blended in. He knew where the kitchen light switch was. He picked his cup from the exact cabinet we always used. He even grabbed the remote and changed the TV to Ben's favorite channel. And one night, I found him in the attic, alone, with a box we hadn't touched in years. It was full of old photos, ones I hadn't looked at since college. He pulled one out and said softly, "You used to wear this dress a lot." It was a photo of me at 21. I had no idea how he knew that. I hadn't worn that dress since before he was born. Ben thought maybe he was guessing. I wasn't so sure. It started with a phone call. Late one night, Ben and I were watching TV while Michael slept upstairs. The landline rang, which was weird because nobody ever called that number anymore. I answered. Static. Then a low, trembling voice. "Get him out of there. He doesn't belong." I froze. "Who is this?" But the line went dead. Ben thought it was a prank. I wanted to believe that too, but my stomach told a different story. The next day, I called the orphanage to ask for more information, maybe a caseworker name or even a file we'd missed. The woman on the other end paused. Then she said, "I'm sorry, ma'am. We have no record of placing a boy with you. What was his name again?" "Michael?" Silence. Then she whispered, "Ma'am, we've never placed a child by that name. Are you sure he came from us?" I hung up, my hands shaking. Something was very, very wrong. 2 days after that phone call, someone showed up at our gate. I was in the kitchen when I saw him through the window, a tall man in a long coat, just standing there, not moving, not ringing the bell, just watching the house. I stepped outside and asked if he needed help. He didn't answer, just stared at me like he was trying to remember something. His eyes looked tired. Then, without a word, he reached into his coat and pulled out an old photo. It was yellowed and cracked like it had been folded 100 times. It was a picture of Michael. Same eyes, same face, but the photo looked old, like it had been taken decades ago. I stammered, "Where did you get this?" The man said one thing before turning around and walking away. "He's not what you think he is." Ben ran outside after him, but the man was already gone. No car, no footsteps, like he vanished. That night, Michael asked me, "Why was that man crying when he saw me?" I hadn't told him about the man. I couldn't stop thinking about the photo. That night, I couldn't sleep, so I got up and started digging through every document we had from the adoption process. Every letter, every form. I needed something, anything that proved Michael's placement was real, but there was nothing. Just one slim folder from the social worker, and even that looked off, like it was put together in a hurry. Then I remembered the old drawer in the hallway desk, the one that had been locked since we moved in. I'd always meant to find the key, but never bothered. This time, I was desperate. I found the key tucked in a teacup of random stuff and opened the drawer. Inside was a small wooden box. I opened it and froze. There were more photos of Michael, all of them taken inside this house, in the same bedroom, wearing the same clothes. But the dates on the backs? 1983, 1985, 1987. Ben and I didn't move here until 2017. I looked at the last photo in the pile. On the back, written in faded ink, it said, "Michael, age 6, last year with us." Last year? Who, us? I slammed the drawer shut just as I heard something behind me. It was Michael, standing in the dark hallway. He tilted his head and whispered, "I liked this house better back then." The next morning, I packed the photos into a folder and drove straight to the town records office. I didn't know what I was looking for. I just knew I had to find something, some clue about this house, about Michael, about what was real. I showed the woman at the front desk one of the photos, the one with Michael standing by the same staircase we still use every day. "Do you recognize this boy?" I asked. She looked at it for a long time, then got quiet. Then she said, "You should talk to Irene." Irene? She worked in child services here a long time ago. If this photo is real, she might be the only one left who remembers. She scribbled down an address, a small cottage outside of town. I drove there immediately, but when I arrived, an older woman answered the door with trembling hands and eyes that widened as soon as she saw the photo. She whispered, "No, not again." I hadn't even told her why I came yet. I stepped inside Irene's cottage. It smelled like old paper and cinnamon tea. She sat down slowly, her hands still shaking, and motioned for me to place the photo on the table. "I thought this was over," she whispered. I asked her what she meant. Who was Michael? What happened? She looked at me like she was trying to figure out how much I could handle. Then she told me, years ago, late 1980s, a boy named Michael was part of a foster placement through the old orphanage. A nice couple took him in. Quiet kid, seemed normal at first, but then strange things started happening. Lights turning on by themselves, pets going missing, Michael being found in locked rooms he couldn't have gotten into. He always smiled through it, always calm, and then one day, he vanished. Vanished? I asked. Gone without a trace. No footprints, no witnesses, just an open back door and the smell of smoke. The family left town right after. They assumed he ran away, or worse, but no one ever found a body. And now, here he was, in my house, looking exactly the same. Irene leaned in and said quietly, "Whatever he is, he doesn't age." I didn't tell Michael where I went that day. Didn't say a word about Irene. Didn't leave a note. But when I got home, he was sitting at the kitchen table, quietly coloring. "Did you find the lady?" he asked. I froze. Ben looked up from the sink. "What lady?" Michael didn't answer. He just kept coloring, slow, steady strokes of crayon on paper. I walked over and peeked at what he'd drawn. It was a perfect sketch of Irene's cottage. Same porch, same flower pots, even the little crack in the window I hadn't noticed until I got there. "You've never been there," I said, my voice shaking. Michael looked up and said, "I don't have to go places to remember them." Then he smiled. That night, I checked his room after he fell asleep. Under his pillow was a crayon drawing of me standing outside Irene's house. In the corner, he'd scribbled, "You should have stayed home." I barely slept that night. The next morning, I felt pulled to the attic again. Not sure why, just a gut feeling, like something was waiting for me. I moved aside a stack of dusty boxes, and one of the wooden floor panels creaked differently than the others. I pried it up with a screwdriver and found a small space underneath. Inside, a leather-bound journal, old, cracked, with initials on the cover, CM. I opened it. It belonged to a woman named Claire Montgomery. She and her husband had lived here in the 1980s. The entries started out normal, renovations, garden notes, her love for the old house. But then the tone changed. One entry read, "Michael is sweet, but sometimes he knows things he shouldn't." A few pages later, "Ben woke up screaming last night. He said Michael was standing over him, eyes open, whispering someone else's name." The final entry was dated exactly 1 day before Michael vanished. It said, "I don't know what we brought into our home, but I think it wants to stay. Forever." I dropped the journal. From downstairs, Michael called. "Are you reading about Claire? She was nice too." I hadn't said her name out loud. Things changed after I read the journal. The house felt different. Not just eerie, alive. Doors I swore I closed would swing open when I passed. Light bulbs flickered, even after we replaced them. At night, I'd hear footsteps, soft and slow, like someone pacing near our bedroom. Ben tried to explain it all away. Old wiring, settling noises, but even he was starting to look over his shoulder. Then one night, I found a name scratched into the kitchen wall under a layer of chipped paint. Michael, 1987. I scraped away more paint and uncovered dozens of names, each paired with a year: 1983, 1984, 1985, all ending in 1989. All the names were crossed out, except one: Michael. The next morning, Michael came down for breakfast and asked, "Did you find my wall?" I didn't answer. Then he said, "The house keeps our names when we don't leave." When, not if. Ben finally sat me down that night. He looked pale. His hands were shaking. He said, "I think we made a mistake. I think we brought something into this house that never really left." We never told Michael when his birthday was. There wasn't a birthday on any of the paperwork, no official record, no date of birth. The orphanage had said he was about 6. That was it. So we picked a random day, April 14th, just something to celebrate. I baked a cake, Ben brought balloons, we wrapped a few gifts. Michael smiled the whole time, but not in a kid having fun kind of way. It was quieter, like he was watching something he'd already seen. When I handed him the gift, he unwrapped it slowly, It was a red toy airplane. His eyes locked onto it, and for the first time since we'd known him, he looked afraid. He whispered, "You found the plane." I said, "What plane?" He turned the toy over and pointed to a small faded name on the bottom. Claire Montgomery, the woman from the journal. This had been hers. He looked up at me and asked, "Why are you giving me things that were already mine?" Ben and I looked at each other, stunned. Then Michael blew out the candles and said, "You picked the right day, by the way. I always liked April 14th. We had never told him the date. It started with the clocks. First the one in the living room, then the one on the stove, even the digital one on my phone. They all froze at 3:14 p.m. every day. No exceptions. I'd be doing laundry or cooking or just reading, and suddenly realized time hadn't moved. Not a second. The air would go still, like the whole house was holding its breath. And during that frozen moment, I'd always hear the same thing. Footsteps. Upstairs. Even when Michael was outside, even if we were all downstairs. One afternoon, I waited by the hallway clock, phone in hand, watching as it ticked from 3:13 to 3:14, and then stopped. Right on cue, soft thuds started from above, like someone walking slowly across the floor. I rushed upstairs. No one. But Michael's bedroom door was open, and inside, all his toys were lined up in a perfect circle on the floor, every single one facing the center. I didn't even hear Ben come up behind me. He whispered, "He's doing it again, isn't he?" I nodded. Then Michael appeared in the doorway behind us and said, "You're not supposed to be in here when it's happening." And the clocks all started again. 3:15 p.m. Like nothing ever happened. We were cleaning out the basement when Ben found the photo. It had slipped behind an old cabinet, sealed in a plastic sleeve, like someone wanted to keep it safe or hidden. It was a group photo. 5 children, all standing in front of our house. One of them was Michael. The date written on the back? April 14th, 1986. But it wasn't just the date that chilled me. It was the names, neatly labeled in pen under each child. Michael, Sarah, Jonah, Ellie, Mark. Only one of the names wasn't crossed out. Michael. I turned the photo over again. That was our porch, our railing, our swing. I showed it to Michael. He looked at it for a long time and then ran his fingers across each name. He whispered, "I tried to help them, but they always leave before they understand." Then he looked at me. "Are you going to leave too?" The photo slipped from my fingers. I didn't know what to say. Because right then, I understood. Michael never left this house. Not in 1986. Not ever. He remained, waiting, watching, hoping. And now, he didn't want to be left behind again. I couldn't unsee the photo. 4 children, all crossed out. One remained. Michael. The house had kept him, or he had kept the house. I didn't know which anymore. That night, after Ben fell asleep, I found Michael sitting at the top of the stairs, knees pulled to his chest, staring into the dark hallway. I sat beside him. "Who were the other kids?" I asked. He didn't look at me. "They were like you, he said. They tried to leave once they found out, but the house doesn't like that. I felt the air shift. What do you mean? I whispered. He finally turned his head toward me, and his voice was softer than ever. If you want to leave, you can. But if you stay, I won't be alone anymore. My heart broke. He wasn't threatening, he wasn't cruel. He was just a little boy who had been left over and over again. But I also knew something wasn't natural here. This wasn't just about him, it was the house, too. And maybe something older than either of us. I looked at him and asked, "What happens if I stay?" He smiled. "What happens if I don't?" He said nothing, just quietly stood up and walked back to his room, leaving the door slightly open, waiting for me to decide. I couldn't sleep. Every creak in the floor felt like the house asking, "Well, what will it be?" By morning, I knew what I had to do, not because I wasn't scared, I was, but because deep down, I didn't believe Michael was the one holding us here. The house was, and Michael, he was just stuck, trapped in some loop that no one had ever helped him break. So, I made my choice. I knocked on his door. He opened it slowly. "I'm not going anywhere," I told him. "But we can't keep living like this. You need to tell me the truth, all of it." He looked surprised, then relieved. We sat cross-legged on his floor while morning light poured through the window. For the first time, he looked like a kid, just a lonely little boy desperate to be understood. He told me about Claire, the first woman who stayed, about the others who tried to leave once they realized time wasn't moving the way it should, and about the night he vanished. I didn't mean to disappear. The house wouldn't let me go. That's when I made him a promise. I'm not going to run from you. I'm going to help you leave. And for the first time, Michael cried. Tears rolled down his cheeks, like something inside him had finally cracked. It started with the name. Michael asked me to say it, his full name. Michael Thomas Montgomery, I whispered. The air shifted. "I haven't heard it in so long," he said, eyes glassy. "Claire used to say it when I was scared." I knew what we had to do. Ben and I gathered the journal, the red toy airplane, the photo from 1986, and the crayon drawings. We brought them to the attic, the same place we'd found the journal buried under the floor. Michael followed us silently. We placed everything in the center of the attic and sat around it in a small circle, just like his toys had done, facing inward, like they were waiting for something. Then Michael looked at me and asked, "Will you tell the house I'm ready?" I didn't know how, but I nodded anyway. And I said, clearly and gently, "You can let him go now. He's not yours to keep." The wind outside howled. The attic creaked. The lights flickered, and then everything went still. Michael smiled. His voice was soft, almost like it was being carried away on the wind. "Thank you for helping me remember who I was." He closed his eyes, and the moment he did, the house exhaled. I don't know how to explain it, but it felt like it released him. Just like that. He was gone. No drama, no lights, no noise. Just peace. The house was silent. Not eerie, not heavy, just still. Like it had finally rested after holding its breath for decades. Michael was gone. His room was empty, but not sad. The toys were gone, the drawings, the whispers, the strange shadows, all of it. The clocks ticked normally, the hallway didn't creak, and for the first time in weeks, Ben and I slept through the night. No footsteps, no freezing time, no 3:14. We didn't talk about it much, not because we were afraid, but because there was nothing left to fear. Sometimes healing isn't loud, it's quiet. It comes when you open a door and realize it doesn't creak anymore. But we kept the photo, the one from 1986. We didn't cross out Michael's name. We let it stand, just as it was. He had finally been remembered and released. People noticed, of course. The neighbors asked where the boy had gone. Friends who had seen him at our place wanted to know why we suddenly stopped talking about him. Even the adoption agency, weirdly silent during the whole thing, called us weeks later saying, "We believe there's been a mix-up. We have no record of placing a child in your home." All Ben and I could do was nod and say, "It's okay. He's not with us anymore." Most people assumed we meant he'd gone back to the system. Some thought we had made it up. One woman even said, "Maybe it was just a phase you two were going through." We didn't argue, because how do you explain a boy who never aged, who remembered things before they happened, who lived through decades in a single house? You don't. Some truths don't fit in words. They live in feelings, in the quiet of a room, in the way a door no longer slams shut by itself. But every now and then, I pass Michael's old room. The rocket wallpaper is still there. The little name tag on the door has faded. And once, just once, I thought I heard a faint voice whisper from inside, "Thank you." It's been months now. The seasons have changed. The garden bloomed again. Life, somehow, found its rhythm. But I've come to understand something. The house remembers. Not in a spooky way, not with shadows or creaks or cold drafts, but with warmth. Sometimes when I walk past the attic, I feel something like sunlight, even when it's cloudy. Sometimes the old floorboard by Michael's door squeaks under no one's weight, like it's checking to see if he's coming back. And sometimes when I wake up too early and the world's still quiet, I hear a soft hum through the walls, like a lullaby the house kept stored away. I don't think the house was ever haunted by something evil. I think it was haunted by grief. Michael had been forgotten, erased, trapped. And now that he's been remembered, loved, and let go, the house is finally free too. So are we. And if someday another child needs a place to be known, to be remembered, well, we'll leave the door open, just in case.